Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of the Weekly Walkthrough with Alex and Graham, part of the Varsity Network of podcasters here at the Max Sports Connection podcast. Thank you so much for joining us this week, Graham. Welcome back. We had it's in that weird transition. We're in that wonky move from Saturday games to midweek games. Finally, everybody's on the midweek slate, so that 10-day break, we're all fast forward here until December.
You gotta love some midweek action, man, and it's exciting to be in that part of the season where it's all midweek games, and you get to get your action fix in the middle of the week, and then you kind of make fun of all of the other schools who have to watch their teams on Saturday when they could be doing fun things like mowing the yard or raking leaves.
I mean, you and I have different definitions of fun, obviously. However, you're right. I mean, there's nothing better than 20-degree Tuesday night. You and I have had many a moments at the Toledo Glass Bowl. Going back to our times back as college students, a great photo of us popped up. We're holding our classic Matt Campbell's cream of husky soup poster that we made in the many, many years ago. And I think 7 degrees would be warm for that night, right?
That was cold. It wasn't that cold, though. I mean, I saw that picture pop up, and based on what I was wearing, it wasn't that cold.
Sure.
It was probably 40s.
It felt miserable, though.
Well, it had that little, the thing that happens in the Midwest in November when it has that like freezing mist rain kind of stuff where it doesn't rain hard enough, but it rains just soft enough to coat you in water for the entire game. And then that wind comes ripping through, and it doesn't really matter what you're wearing as a coat. It feels freezing cold. We also got robbed that night with not literally, although kind of literally in that poster contest.
We did. We were robbed.
It's by all accounts, we had either the best or the second best poster, and we didn't even get mentioned in the like the 5 posters that got picked to go up and get cheered for. So we lost our chance. I think that was a gift card on the line, a Frickers gift card.
Yeah, so, I think it was a $25 Frickers gift card, $50 something. We could have had wings after that game, and the university stole that from us.
Instead,
and then Northern Illinois stole a win.
So we wandered back to the pod and got kind of lukewarm chocolate milk. But, that's the life of a college student.
Some good times in the Glass Bowl we've had. We'll do a whole episode on some of our favorite memories in the Glass Bowl. But before we get into our weekly segment this week, obviously we've got Central Michigan at Toledo. A big one if you're Toledo, and really a big one if you're Central Michigan. You're fighting for your life for bowl eligibility. Toledo, they're on the outside looking in at a potential 3rd straight appearance for a MAC championship. But before we get into that, I want to talk about some of these other conference championships that have happened this year. Obviously it's fall season. Fall season's wrapping up. We're in that crossover season. As many of you know, we start swimming and diving, wrestling, basketball, indoor track and field, and we wrap up the fall sports such as the field hockeys, the football, of course, the cross country, and then of course women's soccer. So I just kind of want to run down some of these championships real quick. Women's soccer, Western Michigan dominated this championship game. They won 5-0 over Buffalo as the host team, and this is their first championship since 2015. This is going to be now their 4th appearance ever in the NCAA tournament, and they completely came out. Buffalo was averaging less than 2 goals surrendered a game coming into this title game. Buffalo looked like they were going to make this a game, and then Western Michigan said, no, we've got other plans. Again, 5-0 in this championship game, and the first tournament title since 2015. Abby Worthman was named the tournament MVP, and for very good reason. She had a hat trick in a championship game. You do that in any sport, you're probably going to be named MVP. She very much earned this. Congrats, of course, to Western Michigan and winning this title. I mean, you don't see a dominant victory in college soccer like this, especially over the number 2 seed in a tournament. Moving on here, I've got Toledo men and women's cross country, of course. This has been a dynasty under Coach Madonna. They've done an excellent job of building this program and building it the right way. Toledo just signed her to a contract extension. And once again, They won the fall cross country championships. This was held over in Muncie last weekend, 2 weekends ago, rather, beginning of November. And they just came out, they dominated, they owned a bunch of the top spots, lots of guys and girls on the podium early. And Toledo has just figured it out. They're not the greatest track and field school, but if you put them on an outdoor course and just let them run, I mean, they get the advantage of all those great parks in the city of Toledo to run through for practice every week. But the great job, and a hats off, of course, to Toledo track and or cross country rather, not track and field, maybe track and field later on this year, but cross country for coming out and just dominating this event once again, the MAC cross country championships. But last and not least, and I want to talk about this team last because they're very near and dear to my heart, Graham, as you know, and as you our listeners might know, Miami Field Hockey won their seventh consecutive MAC tournament field hockey championship. This is their ninth straight appearance in this championship game. Inako Puzo, the coach over there, has done a phenomenal job building an incredible culture. So I went down for their semifinal game against App State. They played this game into overtime, a final score of 3-2 in favor of Miami, of course. Miami came into this tournament as a 3 seed. It was a 3-way tie for first place. Miami, in terms of seeding, lost out on tiebreakers and was slotted in as the 3rd seed. But due to the fact that they won the tournament the year before, they got to host. That's the way the MAC kind of sets it up. If you win the year before, you get to host. So Miami will get to host the tournament again next year, pending any major fall off. But I went down for this tournament semifinal, and I've done this now the last 2 years. They dominated the Ohio Bobcats on the first round game, 6-1. They just came out firing, swinging. They got what they needed. In this App State game, it was an incredibly defensive game. And for those of you who don't watch field hockey, first, you definitely should. I want to be very clear on that. You definitely need to be watching field hockey. But two, there's a lot of nuances to this game. There's a lot of elements to regular hockey, a lot of elements of soccer, and they're kind of mixed in together. And the thing that impressed me the most is this is clearly a team who they've gotten used to winning, but they're not satisfied with winning. They always want to continue to win. They want to keep pushing. I think a lot of times we see some teams in some sports, they kind of get used to winning, so they just expect it. You could see that there was no expectation with this Miami team. They knew, well, now we're the 3 seed, which means that we now have to play a play-in game. We don't get a bye. So they had to play more games than the top 2 seeds to win this tournament. And when they took on App State, like I said, a very defensive battle. I actually have both their fourth quarter goal and the goal that they scored in overtime to win this thing. I captured it on my camera, and they just did an unbelievable job. But what really impressed me was after the game. I got to talk with Coach Chip Rogers and Coach Inako Puzo a little bit, and learned a little bit more about the program. And I got to meet the parents and the supporters of this team. If you were an outsider just looking at the post game tailgate, you would have thought this was for soccer or maybe a sport that gets a lot more recognition within the country and not for field hockey. But there were parents from all over the Netherlands, Barcelona. There was a dad, I think, from Spain, and just listening to them talk about how much they love what Miami has put together and what they've built over the last several years. Of course, winning makes that a lot easier, but you could tell that this truly was a family, and I think that was really special. And I want to thank Miami Field Hockey specifically for welcoming me to that tailgate after the championship. That was very appreciated. Of course, I'm always going to be a supporter of women's sports, but particularly field hockey, and especially Miami Field Hockey for everything that they do and everything they try to put out. I was incredibly impressed with their efforts on Friday. But then again, on Saturday, they came out and they beat JMU, the number 1 seed in the championship, 3-0 to win their 7th consecutive. And now they're going to take on Vermont in the first round of the NCAA tournament here this weekend. And I'm really excited for them. Looking forward to seeing what they're going to do, hoping that they can take down Vermont in that first round. But I just wanted to say, Miami, shout out to you guys. Thank you for being great supporters of the show, but thank you for welcoming me into that circle and that family down there at Miami Field Hockey. It's a really cool thing to be a part of. And guys, if you're not watching field hockey, again, please go watch it. Support these teams. You don't have to be a Miami fan. You can be an App State fan. Kent State has a great program. Ball State has a great program. Central Michigan does a great job. There are great field hockey programs all throughout this league. Check them out, support them, show these girls that what they do is really, really cool and that it matters. So please go support them if you get the chance. And that's really all I have. So again, shout out to Miami Field Hockey for winning the championship. This was Claudia Garcia was the MVP of the tournament, and if you watched her at any point this weekend, it was pretty clear and obvious as to why she won MVP. But again, I just wanted to say hats off and shout out to Miami for winning that tournament and to all of our fall champions so far. We've got volleyball tournament coming up here soon. Bowling Green is hosting that as the number 1 seed. And you're going to see the usual suspects in that tournament: Ball State, Western Michigan. I believe Eastern Michigan even slipped in this year, but should be a great tournament down there, or up there rather, at the Stroh Center over in Bowling Green. But that should be a good time. Graham, anything else on fall championships before we dive into this football matchup?
No, you just said a mouthful, and I think I think you covered it all. I'm happy to talk about that on the weekly walkthrough. Mostly we've been covering the football stuff, so it's nice to have a little bit of the bleed over from the main podcast over here. Make me feel special.
Welcome aboard. Well, Graham, let's just dive into this. Right, we've got Central Michigan, we got Toledo. Central Michigan sitting at 3-6. We've got Toledo sitting at 6-3. These seasons have not gone how I guess really how you'd expect. Jason Candle on his 9th year has not had a losing season. Right now, looks like he's on pace to continue that streak. His worst season has been a 6-6 year from 2019, I believe. But Toledo's got a history of winning since the 2000s. You had a few tough years there in the Tom Amstutz era, but in 2008 they still knocked off mighty Michigan in the Big House, 13-10, in part thanks to a Tyrell Herbert pick 6 touchdown, full field touchdown too. And you go watch that clip; it's a pretty incredible touchdown. But that was probably the low point. Like, that's a celebrated victory in Toledo history. But that's not even Tom Amstutz left the program after that year, and then we saw Tim Beckman come in and start to kind of turn around this Toledo program. Matt Campbell stepped in, of course, who we just talked about a moment ago, and then now it's Jason Candle, who's been at the helm for almost a decade and shows no signs of slowing down as the head coach and leading Toledo to be conference contenders year in and year out.
Well, not Matt Campbell, although Matt Campbell, other great Toledo coach, but Jason Candle within spitting distance of being that the winningest head coach in Toledo history.
Watch out, Gary Pinkel.
He's at 70 wins right now. He needs Gary Pinkel at 73, so 4 more wins, and Jason Candle is the all-time winningest coach at Toledo. That's got to be exciting for him. And it's funny you mentioned he hasn't had a losing season at Toledo, and you said that in a way that implied that he might have a losing season, but he won't. It's he's 6-3 right now. Final games coming up against Central this week, Ohio next week, and then Akron on the 26th. None of those games are games that Toledo is expected to lose. And certainly, Toledo would have to lose all 3 of those to end up 500, and unlikely that they will lose all 3. So, I feel pretty confident right now. Go ahead and chalking this one up as another winning season for the Rockets. But I like the way that you played into a little bit of hysteria there. What is hysteric for the Rockets is whether or not they're going to make it back to a MAC championship. They've been to 3 in a row now?
2 in a row. This would be their 3rd straight if they make it this year.
So this is a Toledo team who, with 1 more loss, they're probably out of the running for that. These last 3 being conference games, that loss would be a conference loss. That's probably going to put you out of it. That's where Toledo is in a dire situation. They're 3-2 in the conference, so you already have 2 conference losses. Another conference loss does probably put you out of the the championship. That's not guaranteed. There's always things that can happen. But if Toledo wants to be in the championship game, they probably need to win out. Central, if Central wants to be bowl eligible, they need to win out. So it's interesting here. We've got two teams who are locked in this idea of we have to win. Every game from here on out is a must-win game. Central wants to be bowl eligible. They want to have that 500 season at least. And head to a postseason game. In order to do that, they're going to need to win out. Their last three are coming up against Toledo this week, Western Michigan after that, and finishing off against Northern Illinois. Those are tough games. This is a Toledo team who is a tough team, Western Michigan team who is currently tops of the conference. And we're talking about a Northern Illinois team who we know is an excellent team. These are maybe three of the top teams in the conference. It's going to be tough for CMU to get those wins. You mentioned that both of these teams have been a little bit unlucky this year. Toledo's luck has come more on the side of unfortunate game results, unfortunate bounces in the game that make it so they've been unlucky there. Although against Eastern Michigan, I would say they got a little bit lucky in terms of the way the ball bounced there. So that's a benefit. CMU's luck has been awful on the injury front. CMU is down to their third string quarterback. This is a redshirt freshman, Tyler Jefferson, who is in there as their third string quarterback. They actually had their fourth string quarterback play a few snaps a week or two ago. And so this is a Central Michigan team who is using third and fourth string quarterbacks in lieu of their highly touted Iowa transfer, Joe Labus, who went down to injury. He's going to be out to the season. Their second string quarterback, Bert Emanuel, is week to week. So this is the kind of thing where going down to that third string quarterback is really tough, especially when you had a guy transfer in who was supposed to be kind of the savior for this offense. Not to mention that Miami is missing 5 of their top wide receivers this year as well to injuries, and that includes most of their speed core at wide receiver. So when you take that receiving game and you really make it more one-dimensional, it's more of a possession game now. It gets way harder to run an offense, and you can see that in the numbers. The Central Michigan Chippewas, they're averaging 360 yards per game, but only 175 of that comes on the ground, with 185 rushing yards per game. What's interesting about this about both these teams, neither of them really have one central running back. This is certainly running back by committee. We're going to talk about Marion Lukes for the Chippewas. Has 537 rushing yards, which is nothing to sneeze at. But when we talk about the fact that the Chippewas have over 1,000 rushing yards in the season, you can see it's about half of them come from their leading rusher there. And remind me, we'll talk about the M&M brothers a little bit later, but that's the beginning of the Chippewas backfield. This is an offense that has become very one-dimensional. It makes it easier for defenses to key on them. They've still managed to score a respectable 25.4 points per game on offense, which is not bad for the Chippewa team. But what Central Michigan will tell you is that the highlight of this program has been the defense this year. And that's, of course, due to the injuries on offense. But this defense is only allowing 209 passing yards a game. That's pretty good. And they're highlighted by Jordan Kwiatkowski, who ranks number 1 in the MAC in terms of tackles for loss. So this is a team who can get the big plays and do what needs to happen to make the opponent kind of cough over the ball sooner than they're planning on it.
Well, and I think it's really interesting, that's the thing that's plagued Toledo this year has been the what seems to be a lack of a ground game, right? I think a lot of people have pointed to that as like, this isn't the Toledo of yesteryear where Toledo had the MAC Offensive Player of the Year and was their running back, right? Penny Boone, of course, who went on to now, I believe he's at UCF, mixed up in that backfield. Not getting the opportunities down there I think that he wanted. Obviously, I wish the best for him. But you bring up Marion Lukes. This was a guy who I thought years ago, and when I say years ago, I mean 2 years ago, I thought was going to be the big, dominant running back in this league. And you mentioned this year he's got 537 rushing yards on the year, only 4 touchdowns, which, I mean, again, you've mentioned running back by committee. It's really interesting to me how he's their bell cow, but then you look down the list and they've got guys like Nari Biggins, they've got Miles Bailey, all these other guys are contributing on average at a slightly higher clip than Marion Luke's, and I think that's because the conference respects Marion Luke's. They understand, hey, this is a guy who, if you give him a little bit of space, he's going to make a game-breaking play. But to your point, looking at the defense, I watched that Bowling Green Central Michigan game last week. They kept Bowling Green in check for quite a while. They slowed down that high-powered Harold Fannin-led offense, that Terrion Stewart offense, that Connor Basil. They slowed all those guys down, held them to 23 points, one of their lowest averages on the or one of their lowest point totals on the year, only behind the Northern Illinois game where they were held to 7 points. But I was very interested to see just how much they were able to disrupt the game that the Bowling Green Falcons had. Granted, weather played a part in that. I'm not gonna say that weather didn't play a hand in that, but I think it's really interesting that Central Michigan, for all their faults on what they weren't able to do offensively, you held one of the best offenses in the conference to one of their lower point totals of the year, and that's something that should be commended and noticed.
So this is going to be the 53rd meeting between Central Michigan and Toledo. Rockets currently have a 29, 20, and 3 advantage. You always love it when these series have a bunch of ties in there because that tells you how close the series has been. Toledo, of course, 9 games, the favorite there. They are way better than that in Toledo. They're 17-7 with 2 ties in Toledo all time against the Chippewas. But they've also won 7 straight in Toledo and 12 of the last 14 overall. So this is a Toledo team who comes in favored. The line opened here 15.5. Now favored 16.5. So it's a Toledo team who is well favored here, who has the history on their side. But Alex, spoiler alert, I'm wearing my Central colors because the Chippewas are winning this week.
It's very interesting. My Toledo Rockets are winning this week. I just want to get that out there because they're mine this week. And I find it interesting that you bring that up about Toledo having the history on the side. Tugger Gleason, for all of his faults this year, I mean, he's still the starter, and he has still come out. He has still thrown for almost 2,000 yards this year. He's got 18 touchdowns. Yes, he has 7 picks, but he still looks like the quarterback I think everybody expected him to be. I know Toledo's kind of been in this weird win, lose, win, lose, win, lose pattern, but Central Michigan's coming off of 4 in a row, including that incredibly devastating loss to Eastern Michigan that frankly they shouldn't have lost. They gave up 22 points in the fourth quarter to lose 38-34. You get blown out by Miami, Ohio, 46-7, and then the loss to Bowling Green at home last week. You hear it. I hear it. The fans are starting to call for Coach Jim McElwain's head. They're, hey, it's time to move on. Let him retire. Let him go live out in his home in Montana and do some fly fishing. But when the history's on your side, and I know that this is not always true, but when the history's on your side, when the numbers across the board are relatively on your side, when you've got one of the best defenses in the Mid-American Conference, which I don't know if you've looked at any of these defensive numbers lately, Graham, but Toledo is still tearing it up in the Mid-American Conference. They're one of the top 5 in terms of scoring defense in the league, only giving up 22 points a game. This is a defense who they've been playing lights out. Their rush defense is top 3. Their pass defense is in the top half. I mean, this is a Toledo defense who they've had to hold up the offense a little bit. They've had to say, all right, it's our turn to drag you. In yesteryear, we've seen this Toledo offense be so prolific. You and I remember the days of Logan Woodside, good old Woody Woodside throwing 55 touchdowns a season. You know who sits at the top of the league in terms of passing yards? Tucker Gleason. And it's not, I mean, this guy he's been so dominant. He is averaging 237 passing yards a game, and he's missed time. He missed a game, and he's still leading the league in yard average. He's still leading the league in so many categories. He's leading the league in passing touchdowns, and he missed a game. When Tucker Gleason is on, he is the gunslinger we all think he's going to be. And then he's got guys like Junior Vandeross and Jerron Newton, who are always seemingly available for him to pass to, who both seem to have hands of glue when he throws their way. Jerron Newton broke the Toledo all-time receiving touchdown record a couple weeks ago. This is an offense who, while not as high-powered as they have been, I still think the offensive line is cause for concern. This is an offense who can move the ball. They can do what they need to do. You talked about them beating Eastern Michigan last week. Prayer win or not, lucky win, fluke win, whatever you want to call it. They came in and they got the win. You go into a hostile environment against a rival, non-rival. Eastern Michigan considers Toledo a rival. I don't think Toledo fans really feel the same way about Eastern. But when you can go into an environment at a rival, non-rival, especially in this league, when you're both fighting for a shot at a conference championship game or a shot at bowl eligibility, you're able to do it on the road against a pretty good Eastern Michigan squad. To me, that speaks volumes. Now you get to come home. You've had 10 days off. That's the other thing I want to talk about. Central Michigan had their 10-day break last week coming into that Bowling Green game. Toledo's had 10 days to rest and prepare. Central's had 7. 3 days can be a big difference.
You're right. It can be a big difference
for college football.
When we're talking about rest versus rust, I'm afraid that the Rockets might come in here a little bit rusty. As a medal competitor, being a Rocket, they are a little more prone to rust when it comes to that. These Chippewas, you're right, coming off of a devastating 4-game stretch. And all of those being conference games is even harder. That's the kind of motivation that a team needs to come, especially when their bowl eligibility, their postseason eligibility is on the line here. These Central Michigan Chippewas are a team that they're looking for some bright spots. We talked about the unluckiness of their injuries. We've also had some unluckiness in terms of just losing games that you should have been winning. You talked about the Ohio game, the Eastern Michigan game. Both of those games, very winnable games that don't go their way. This is a Central Michigan team who, going back to last year, has had, I want to say, I'm pulling this number off the top of my head, but I think the number is something like 13 one-score games that they've been in since last year. And that's incredible. For a team to have so many games come down to a single score, you got to think that at some point the Chippewas are going to figure out how to win the majority of those games. They were doing that last year. We're talking about this regression towards the mean. Maybe that's what's going on with the Chippewas here. But I got to think that this is their time to step up in Toledo. We started to talk about this defense for the Chippewas. I talked about Jordan Kwiatkowski being or leading the MAC in tackles for loss. We also have Jonah Pace, Dakota Cochran, and Jason Williams, who are all been great in terms of tackles for loss and sacks in the MAC. These guys tied for sacks with 3.5 at the 16 through 18 spots in the conference. And then Jonah Pace and Dakota Cochran are number 5 and number 14 in the MAC in terms of tackles for loss, respectively. So this is a Central Michigan team who can step up, who can knock out negative yards against the offense, and then force that team to make tough decisions when it comes to what to do on offense. I mentioned that we're going to get into the M&M brothers, and it's just because I love the nickname. That's a hint for you. If you want me to talk about you, have a great nickname. The M&M brothers are Marion Luke, so you talked about 2 years ago. Everybody saw him as the Lou Nichols heir apparent. And he hasn't really done that, even though he's done a great job at running back for the Central Michigan team. This is a shift we've seen throughout college football and throughout football as a whole. We're seeing a lot more of this running back by committee. Marion Luke's had his roommate, actually, Miles Bailey, is one of the other running backs for this Central Michigan team. They call themselves the M&M brothers. I don't know if you've seen this year, Alex, but when they score a touchdown, the other one throws M&Ms on the sidelines.
I have not
So, so
seen that.
so we've got an M&M celebration for the M&M brothers when they score touchdowns, which hasn't happened that often this year. But between the two of them, they have 7 rushing touchdowns. So it happens often enough that I'm expecting to see some M&M trees growing on Mac's sidelines that's coming this next year. I'm hoping the grounds crew is going to take care of those saplings. Because I like to harvest M&Ms, especially come October when it is candy season.
Everybody who knows you knows that you're a big M&M harvester. So there's a song after called M&M Harvester. I'm pretty sure. No, I think that's International Harvester. I don't know. But you talk about these M&M brothers. I know that was a little rough. It's folks. I don't listen to country music. Please do not send any recommendation my way, or do. I may listen. I may not. Graham will probably listen because he's nicer about that than I am. So if you have any country music recommendations, such as M&M Harvester, send them our way. We'll be happy to listen. Anyway, so you talk about these M&M brothers. I love that, right? I think it's important to have running backs by committee. But I think that tells you a lot. Everybody talks about if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have 3 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. I don't think that's the case with running backs. In fact, I think the more running backs that you have that can be effective, that's a huge, huge asset to any offense. And I think in the case for Central Michigan, that's a massive asset. The issue is you don't have a passing offense. That's where Central Michigan gets in trouble. You talked about Joe Labus being out. You talked about Bert Emanuel being out. This is an offense who they sit at 120th in the country in terms of passing yards per game. And I'm gonna just say a big part of that is you're now down to your 3rd and 4th string quarterbacks. But it's so easy to key in on what your offense is doing. Toledo could play, they could play 2 men high and just have 2 safeties hanging out and then just stack the box because what Central Michigan's going to do. Now, if you're Central Michigan, you want to try to get some kind of lead early so that you can do that and eat up some of that clock. But if you're Toledo, I think this is what we're going to see happen. Toledo's going to go up. They're going to get up on Central Michigan, and they're going to force the Chippewas into a game plan and a game script that they are not prepared to be in. And that's when you're going to see guys like Dan Bolden, Maxon Hook, Jackson Barrow all step up, play big time defensive moments for the Rockets, and it's gonna slowly snowball. Central Michigan, they've got a great defense, and they're gonna give Tucker Gleason, they're gonna give Jacquez Stewart, they're gonna give this offense plenty of fits. I have no doubt about that. This Toledo offense, who, as much as I love them, have made me scratch my head quite a bit this year. We knew they'd be going through growing pains, but when you've got great skill guys, such as the ones I've mentioned, we've got Tucker Gleason, who I still think is a pretty good quarterback, and that's proven by the amount of touchdowns he's thrown in conference, despite missing time. I think what you're going to see here very quickly is Central Michigan's going to get so out of rhythm that they're not going to be able to turn to the M&M brothers. And those M&M trees are going to dry up. Those saplings are going to die in the Glass Bowl this weekend, or this Tuesday night. And you hate to see it.
Well, I love taking the M&M tree metaphor just a step further there. I think what you're neglecting is that you mentioned earlier the thing that scares Toledo fans, the things that has caused Toledo fits this year is this offensive line occasionally letting folks through. This is a Central Michigan defense who has a lot of scary guys who are ready to come through a weakened offensive line and get to the quarterback. That's why this Central Michigan passing defense has been so good this year, only allowing 209 yards per game through the air. It's not so much the coverage, although the coverage has been good. Don't get me wrong. It's the pressure. It's the quarterback pressure that these guys up front can bring for the Chippewas here. And against the Toledo offensive line, I don't know that they'll have an answer for it. The other thing is Tucker Gleason coming off of injury there. he hasn't looked quite as mobile, even in this Eastern Michigan game. I'm not sure we can count on his ability to escape the pass rush from CMU. I think that's a big reason CMU is going to force themselves into good field position through their defense, forcing the Rockets into fourth and long situations where they have to punt. And giving their offense a chance with the ball. This offense is certainly shorthanded in terms of their injuries, but I think Central Michigan has the defense that can create the big plays that allow their offense ample opportunity to prove what they've got. This Toledo team on both sides of the ball has been especially susceptible to the big play. In terms of the offense letting sacks occur, letting Tucker Gleason go down, letting running backs get stuffed in the backfield, as well as the defense letting up big plays. And if Central can string together just a handful of big plays, it's not going to matter so much statistically whether they're putting up yards on the ground or yards through the air. If they can score a couple of touchdowns, this game might go the way of the Chippewas. In fact, I think that's what's going to happen. The pressure is high for both of these teams. Toledo is looking to get that third MAC championship in a row, but we know how hard that can be. I don't mean third win in the MAC championship, third appearance in the game. But we know how hard that can be to get to the MAC championship in this league of parity. It's hard to imagine that Toledo can string that together. 3 wins here with this team who has been playing with fire all year long, where they seem like they give up big plays. I think Central has it this week. Central needs these wins to be bowl eligible, to become bowl eligible, and I think they're going to do it. I think Central is going to turn it on. We're going to see what this team really can be as they slowly gain people back from injury, and we see if this Chippewa offense can turn around. I can't imagine the offense can be any worse than it has been. It is only going to get better for the Chippewas through the rest of the season. And I think their big playability on defense is what's going to allow them to come out victorious in Toledo on Tuesday night.
So I think that so anybody who follows the podcast on Twitter X or over on Instagram, I've been putting out some of my MS scenarios. You can thank Russ Eisenstein for that play on words, if you will. But Toledo, they need help to win, to get to the MAC championship, not just to win it, but to get to the MAC championship. Obviously, starts with winning out. You win out, you still have a shot. Remaining schedule, of course, being Central Michigan, Ohio, and then Akron. But here's what Toledo needs. Toledo will scoreboard watch while they're in this game. And this game could be a trap game. I'm not going to, but this game could be a trap game because Toledo will be scoreboard watching. Because here's what they need to have happen. They need Bowling Green to lose 2 games. 2 games which Bowling Green could lose. Western Michigan, Miami. Those are going to be very good competitive games. Buffalo must drop a game. Buffalo doesn't have the easiest schedule. They don't have a difficult schedule, but they don't have the easiest schedule remaining. So possibility they do that. Miami needs to lose a game. So Miami could beat Bowling Green, but then they could drop a game to someone else. Western Michigan must lose to either Central or EMU. They can lose to Bowling Green, but Bowling Green must lose to Miami and Ball State. So, I mean, there's a lot of things. So they need one of those scenarios to happen. There's 4 different scenarios. They need 3 of those scenarios to happen, not just one, but they need 3. Toledo's going to be watching the scoreboard, but they know what they have to do. They have to take care of business at home first. You can't be thinking about what Bowling Green's doing, Western's doing. You have to be worried about what you're doing on your own turf. Toledo understands this. Jason Candle understands this. He understands that this is a team that's depleted overall compared to last season's 11-3 team. You're right. 1 loss eliminates them. They're not looking to get eliminated this week. They're not going to get eliminated this week by losing. If they're going to get eliminated this week, it's because Miami, Bowling Green both won a game. Like that's how it's going to be. I think Toledo wins this one. I think this offense gets things really clicking. They get things going. Tucker Gleason has now had 10 days to kind of rest those injuries, get back to form. I think that we're going to see John Allen Richter get rolled out. an opportunity for him to come out and take some snaps and continue to get more comfortable with a team that he is going to be leading next year or going to be competing to lead next year. And John Allen Richter has the ability to scramble. He played a great game against Northern Illinois. I like what he's able to do. So I think that we're going to see a few wildcat formations, a few fun little things bringing in John Allen Richter. But Tucker Gleason gets it done. Juwan Newton, and Junior Vandeross combined for, I don't know, 3 receiving touchdowns, 3 passing and receiving touchdowns. I mean, they're going to have a good game. I like Toledo at home. First home action game of the year, coming off 10 days rest. They're going to be fired up. The weather doesn't look like it's going to be too terrible on Tuesday night. It looks like it's going to be a little bit crisp, but not too bad. And I'm really excited for this one. Graham.
It's funny. That's you say the weather is not going to be too terrible. Right now, it looks like it's going to be 42 degrees at kickoff, which is that's pretty cold for a football game. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens there in terms of the weather. That 42 degrees, fun fact, is exactly the same temperature it was for that Northern Illinois game that you just talked about was so cold for us.
It was miserable
when we were in college.
You mentioned the rain, though, so I want to be clear that the rain was a major contributing factor to that.
But no, I'm excited to see whether your predictions come true. It's a little blasphemous that you haven't mentioned Anthony Torres at all, so I'm going to throw his name out there. A great receiving tight end for the Rockets, and brings down a lot of those balls in the end zone. Big touchdown reception contributor for the Rockets. What we're going to see this week for CMU is big plays on defense, these tackles for loss, these sacks that sets up their offense with decent field position. And then I expect to see the M&M brothers come out and really prove that they are the stars of the show in this depleted CMU offense. We're going to see at least a couple of rushing touchdowns from the Chippewas, whether it's the M&M brothers or others. But Central comes out on top. It's going to be a close one. CMU always plays close games, and this season they've been on the losing side of them. I expect this one to be a win for the Chippewas.
You got a score prediction for me?
No.
All right. Good enough for me. I mean, you're right. Anthony Torres, I mean, great. He's third on the team in receiving, both in receptions and receiving yards. But, going back to the run game, Toledo has not been great on the ground, but they do have their own committee, Kyler Wallensack, the running back from Perrysburg, so the local. But then Savon Clark has been awesome coming in from, I believe, Georgia is where he transferred in from. And I mean, he seems to fit right in with this Toledo team. Of course, Juwan Newton or Jaquez Stewart. Juwan Newton's the receiver. Jaquez Stewart has not been the dominant running back, the speedster that I think we all thought he was going to be. But he's got a great
and part of that is injuries. Part of that,
well, sure, and I recognize
part of that is
right?
injuries for these Rockets here.
Yeah. So, but I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this offense kind of moves going forward with what these guys bring to the table. I think it's the Rockets getting the victory at home. So I'm gonna pick Toledo, and it's gonna be fun. You guys will have to check that game out. It is over on, I believe, on ESPNU at 7:00 on Tuesday night. Toledo again the favorite by 14.5. So it should be a good one. But I did want to ask if you guys checked out the Varsity app by Lairfield yet. It is a free app to download in the Apple App Store, Google Play Store. You can listen live to all your favorite audio broadcasts from your favorite Division I college teams. You can check out the calls from all the voices all across the Mid-American Conference, Big Ten, Pac-2, Mountain West, whatever. All these guys, part of the Lairfield family, the Lairfield network. You can also find hundreds of great podcasts. Focus on your favorite teams, your favorite conferences, all part of this same Varsity podcast network. And some of the greats, I mean, there's a lot of great podcasts out there, guys. Some of the greats, including yours truly, the Max Sports Connection. But then you've also got the Group of Five Guys podcast, the Sickos Committee podcast, and dozens upon dozens, a couple hundred different podcasts through this network. You guys can download that today for free. Start listening to the calls and the podcast of your favorite schools. Graham, let's transition over to all 6 games. Feels weird that we've condensed it from 12 all the way down to 6. Like we've cut our margin of games in half, but that means the season's almost over. It's hard to believe.
I mean, love it when we're in Maction time, and especially when that Maction occurs midweek. The more M's that we have, the more I can claim that they're all rooting for Central Michigan here. But yeah, let's get into it. Let's talk about some midweek Maction matchups.
We got 3 games here on Tuesday. All these games, of course, kick off at 7:00 p.m. This first one over on the CBSN Sports or CBS Sports Network. We got Ball State traveling to Buffalo. Ball State, they've played some good football as of late. They got the win over Northern Illinois, but then they took Miami to the wire, giving them a little bit of a scare in that top spot in the Mid American Conference. But Ball State travels to Buffalo. Buffalo favored by 4. Who do you like in this one?
I do like the Bulls here. Buffalo has looked good this season. They've had a slight misstep, but really this is a Buffalo team who has the talent. They could be the top of the MAC. They're in a similar situation to Toledo, where if they want to be in that championship game, they pretty much have to win out. That's not officially mathematically correct, but just kind of looking at the league, we know that they pretty much have to win out if they want to be in that championship game. So I expect the Bulls to win here. I don't expect this to be especially close. This is going to be a cold one in Buffalo. Buffalo already does great at home. They are one of those teams who seems to thrive in the cold weather. I expect Buffalo comes out on top here. If you want a score prediction, I'm going to say this one is kind of low scoring, but this is going to be 23-13 in favor of the Bulls.
I like it. Tanner Koziel for Ball State, looking to continue to make his mark and in program history as their leading tight end over there. But I like the pick. Buffalo should get it done at home. Moving on, we got Western Michigan, who stumbled last week against Northern Illinois. Really just got thrashed by Northern Illinois, if we're being really honest. They travel to Bowling Green, 7:00 on ESPN2 down there at Deutsch Perry. Who you like in this one, Graham? The Falcons or the Broncos?
I think 2 weeks ago I may have called this one differently. But for those of us who know the MAC and had watched Western Michigan this year, we knew that these Broncos were a strong team. But I think a lot of us were saying, let's wait until they hit the meat of the schedule. Let's wait until they face off against the NIUs and the Bowling Greens of the world. Well, now we're getting to see it. And the way they played against NIU tells me that they probably are not ready for the Falcons. We'll see if maybe they bounce back from that NIU game. I expect this one to be a little bit closer, but I do think Bowling Green comes out victorious here. Another one midweek cold game probably won't be as high scoring as we might generally project for these two teams, both of whom have scored a lot of points on offense this year. But this one, I'm looking at Bowling Green 38 and then Western somewhere in that 27-28 range.
I like it. Yeah, I think Bowling Green at home, that's the advantage, right? I think if this was in Kalamazoo, maybe we're looking at a different outcome. But Bowling Green's look good on the road this year too, so I can't even really say anything that would really make me think Bowling Green wouldn't have had a potential advantage up there at Waldo Stadium. Western Michigan, you're right. They've looked good all year. They're still my dark horse, and they've still got a pretty solid shot to get to the MAC championship game. They win out, they're pretty much in. But Western Michigan, they've got to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, if Western Michigan wins out, I do think they are in the game. There's nobody here who would be in over them.
They could get into a 3-way tie with Ohio, Miami, and Western, and based on the numbers, it would go down to like the 4th or 5th tiebreaker with the Bobcats, because they wouldn't have a head-to-head. So it would just depend on how other teams around them finished. If they all finish out 7-1.
Well, we'll have to do some MSC scenarios to see who comes out on top there with these.
They're already up on our Instagram if you want to check those out. Western Michigan has their MSC scenario. Ohio, Bowling Green, Miami, and Toledo are all up as teams who could potentially win the MAC championship. The Western Michigan Broncos, I'm looking at it right now. They went out, and then if Miami or Ohio loses, they're automatically in. If they get into a three-way tie, all at 7-1, tiebreaker one would give Miami the one spot, leaving Ohio and Western Michigan, because they wouldn't have. There's something with how the common opponent works. Tiebreaker one would end the tie with Ohio and Miami. Miami would move on. It's all really weird. You guys can check it out on the Instagram. I've got them all pulled up, ready to go. People are looking at them. People have said they've appreciated the work I've done. I'm sure I probably got something wrong. So that being said, Western Michigan, you win out, you're in the MAC championship game. Let's just we'll simplify that here for you. Moving on, we've already talked Central Toledo. Again, that's 7:00 over on ESPNU. We don't need to talk about that one anymore. You've got all the information we can provide you, or you can just Google stuff yourself. Whatever. Moving on to the Wednesday slate, we've got Kent State at Miami, Ohio. Miami, who had a little bit of a scare from the Red Hawks or from the Cardinals last week. The Red Hawks are going to bounce back, and they're just going to flat out bury Kent State. Miami is favored by 30.5 points, and I don't feel like that's enough, Graham.
Well, what's funny? I've been mentioning each of these games in the midweek action slate. They become colder games because they start later. We're already into November here. As the season moves on, each of these games is going to get colder and colder. But when we go all the way down south to Miami, it's not quite as far south as that other team who we won't mention. But this Miami team also one of the more southern teams in the conference. And the game's going to be a balmy 51 at kickoff, and I think that plays
Mm-hmm.
for both of these teams. I don't expect this to be low scoring the way these other games have been. Kent State has looked like a team who cannot figure out how to play football, and I can't imagine that Miami is going to have any trouble covering this 30.5 point spread here. I think this one looks something like Miami 33 compared to a Kent State 11, maybe. This is
it's awfully generous of you.
I'm having a hard time seeing Kent even get into double digits, but let's say they get it done. Let's say the Flashes figure it out and they work their way up there into that 10 points, and they get a double digit loss to Miami here.
Kent State, of course, coming off a 41-0 defeat at the hands of the Ohio Bobcats a week ago, in a game where Ohio, I think they started just running practice during the middle of the game. If I'm being honest, they looked like they were just out there just having a little bit of fun. Which, when you're beating a conference opponent 41-0, who wouldn't have a little bit of fun?
It's sad actually. This is a Kent State program who has had a lot of success in the past. They are a historic program in the MAC, and to see them in these the throes of not just a terrible season, but a terrible few seasons. It's kind of sad to see how far they've fallen.
It is.
Hoping for a Golden Flashes bounce back, if not this season, then hopefully next.
Nick Saban, if you're listening, we can't offer you anything. And I don't know that Kent State could offer you much more than what we can offer you. But if you're listening, it's time to come home.
Okay. I'm sure that'll be enough to sell Nick Saban on coming back to coach the Flashes.
Here, hold on. I just got a text from Nick Saban here. I'm coming home. You guys heard it here first.
He says, buy more Affleck.
Yeah. Why is he sending duck emojis? Anyway, moving on. We've got Akron at Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois coming off the Telly Johnson coming out party, 141 yards a week ago and a couple scores in that dominant win over Western Michigan. Northern Illinois is at home. This is a 7:00 kickoff over there on CBS Sports Network. Husky Stadium, DeKalb Huskies by 15.5. What do you think? I think the 15.5 is good.
Yeah, I expect if this was in Akron, that might change my opinion a little bit. It would not change who the victor of this game will be. This is definitely an NIU win. This is an NIU team we saw come out and beat Notre Dame to start the season. And it's a team who since then has had some embarrassing losses. And I think what's going to happen here is NIU the rest of the way wants to prove that they were the beginning of the season team and not the mid-season team.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't expect that the Huskies are going to do anything less here. I don't know that they cover the full 16 points. In my mind, this looks more like a 2-touchdown victory for the Huskies. So that puts them up by 14, something like 28 to 14. But who knows? Maybe Akron missed an extra point in there and gives the Huskies their 15 or 16 to cover the spread.
I dig it. And then, of course, the last game of the week, the Eagles fly down to Peden Stadium to take on the Bobcats of Ohio, 7 o'clock on ESPN2. Bobbies by 8.5. I'm just going to say 2 words, Graham. Roll Bobbies.
Roll Bobbies is what you're saying. What I love here is that this is a matchup of MAC greens. That's always fun to see the green teams take on each other. This is my favorite aesthetic matchup in the conference. So I like that. Occasionally, we do get a leading into the postseason green and red matchup, which feels appropriate for Christmas time. But but other than that, I do like a green on green matchup here. I do think Ohio comes out on top in this one, but Eastern Michigan has been a sneaky team all year long, getting victories where we didn't expect them to. I expect this one to be way closer than the 8.5 that the Bobcats are given right now. Ohio comes out on top, but they do not cover. This one is going to be close, something like Ohio 32 compared to an Eastern Michigan 28.
I want to point out Eastern Michigan, of course, getting wins where they're not expected to, such as the Jacksonville State game to start the year. But then they're losing games that they shouldn't be losing, such as 25-21 to Akron just 2 weeks ago. So, like you said, it should be interesting. I like the Bobcats in this one. It should be a fun matchup between two teams, one fighting for bowl eligibility, the other fighting for a possible MAC championship berth. Graham, did you have anything else before we sign this thing off?
I mean, I'm going to ask you to stop making digs on me about my Eastern Michigan talks there, but other than that,
I'm never going to stop digging.
I think arguably the loss to Toledo most recently, 10 days ago or so, that one should have been a victory for the Eastern Michigan Eagles as well. Kind of an inexplicable decision to go for 2 at the very end of the game. But who knows how that game would have resulted had it gone to overtime. But certainly a game that was winnable for Eastern Michigan. Other than that,
I'll tell you this, Graham. The Reverends had a phrase for this. If ifs and buts were candies and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. And it's not going to be a very Merry Christmas up there in Ypsilanti.
Well, I'm glad that the Reverends at your orphanage had that saying for you, Alex. And I hope you and the other orphans had a very Merry Christmas indeed with your candy and your nuts. But I'll tell you what, I'm sure glad that somebody adopted you because I've been excited to do these weekly walkthroughs with you and talk about a little bit of MAC football. I think that wraps us up for this week, Alex. I don't know what more we could talk about now that you're talking about your old orphanage days.
No, guys, that's going to do it for us. Make sure you guys are checking out all these games here, as you see on the ticker here at the bottom. Of course, lots of great matchups in the Mid-American Conference this week. If you want to check out all the social media handles, I would really appreciate it. If you hit follow, subscribe, connect with whatever, please continue to support the podcast. You can find me over on Twitter, Instagram, and and TikTok over at the MSC Podcast. You can also check out the channel on YouTube, where that's where we're posting the live videos. You can check that out, and you'll see this video there at MSC Podcast. Of course, Facebook, if you're in the 30 plus crowd like we are, you can check out the Facebook page at the Max Sports Connection Podcast, and we'll be doing some other content throughout the rest of the season. Got some more midweek musings and things like that we're going to be bringing your way. More weekly walkthroughs, more MS scenarios, just a lot of things as we're heading into this crossover season. Going to be talking some Maxketball. Man, that's always a tough one. So we're going to be talking some basketball, some shooty hoops, if you will. I've got a sheet that I'll be posting on the Twitter page that I'm going to be linking. It'll be an updated RPI or Ken Palm rankings, rather, for each MAC school. Going to try to update those weekly so you guys can see where you started the season, where you go through the season, and where you may end the season for your favorite MAC program. So be sure to check that out as well. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We truly appreciate the support. It's a joy to do these. It really is. It's a lot of fun to dive into these schools, dive into these programs, to have a great partner such as Graham to do these with. I'm very appreciative, and we're appreciative to you guys for listening and tuning in and, correcting us when we're wrong and cheering us on when we're right. We really appreciate the support and the outpouring of love and shares that you guys continue to give us. So from us to you, thank you very much. And that's going to do it for us this week. So have a great rest of your week, guys. Tune into some midweek action, and we'll see you next week.